The earth was still fresh when the last shovel of dirt fell onto the coffin. The muffled sound of the impact echoed louder than it should have, as if it were trying to scream the pain Lila couldn't put into words. She didn't cry, not anymore. The tears had dried hours ago, and now there was just an overwhelming emptiness. A strange silence, broken only by the murmurs of people around her and the creaking of the wood being covered. She stood there, frozen, while the few friends and neighbors began to disperse. Some hugged her, others just nodded sympathetically. But no gesture could reach the hole that was opening inside her, as deep as the one in the ground. At 24, she didn't feel ready for a world without her mother. She still needed her laugh at the end of the day. She still wanted to wake up to the smell of coffee and hear that calm voice saying, "Everything will be okay." Her mother was all she had. The only certainty. The only familiar story. It had always been just the two of them against the world. But Evelyn was gone. And Lila was alone. She stared at the freshly closed grave, unsure of where to go, when she felt a presence approaching. A man of simple appearance, with graying hair at his temples, light brown eyes, which for a moment she thought were oddly familiar, and a hesitant smile, like someone about to do something difficult. His nervousness was palpable. "Lila?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. She frowned, surprised. No one there called her by her name with that kind of familiarity. She studied him for a moment, trying to remember if she knew him. "No." "Who are you?" she asked cautiously. The man hesitated, took a deep breath, and lowered his eyes before meeting hers again. "My name is Daniel. And I'm your father." The words hit her like a cold wind. Lila stepped back, as if he had just yelled. This didn't make sense. It couldn't be real. Her father? She didn't have a father. Her mother had always said he left before even knowing she was pregnant. An absence, a name never spoken. A story that ended before it even began. "Is this some kind of joke?" she snapped, her voice wavering. Daniel shook his head, his eyes now pleading for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe just a chance. I never knew. Your mother never told me. I found out only a few months ago. I tried to find you, but now I'm here. I know it's too late. But I couldn't leave without trying to see you. Without telling you who I am." Lila stood in silence. The world seemed to slow down around her. A moment ago, she was just a grieving daughter. Now, an orphan with a stranger claiming to be her father. She took another step back. Her mother's grave seemed to glow in the weak afternoon sun, as if protecting her. As if saying, "Be careful. Not everything is as it seems. I don't have a father. Leave me alone." She turned to walk away, but he spoke again, quickly, pulling a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "Please. I won't insist. But if you ever want to talk, ask, scream at me, here's my number. Just keep it." He extended the paper with trembling hands. Lila hesitated. Then, without really knowing why, she took the paper without looking at him, stuffing it into her coat pocket as if she wanted to be done with it quickly. And she walked away, not looking back. She felt, uncomfortably, the doubt arise and take shape in the middle of her pain. Intuitively, she knew that whether she liked it or not, that story was just beginning. The days following Evelyn's funeral were a blur. Lila barely ate, barely slept. The house felt bigger without her mother's light footsteps, without the kettle whistling in the mornings, or the smell of coffee being brewed slowly. The silence was so loud it hurt. But there was one thing that hurt more than the grief, the doubt. The apartment, still heavy with the scent of funeral flowers, seemed frozen in time. Everything was just as Evelyn had left it, the shawl draped over the armchair, the book open to page 173, and a forgotten cup of tea on the table, a thin film forming on the cold liquid. She tried to push the image of that man from her mind, but he came back every night, in her dreams and in her thoughts. "I'm your father. That sentence echoed in her head like an uncomfortable reminder, hammering away at the certainties she had. Her father. The word still felt strange, like a piece of clothing she had never worn. For years, she had grown up with the idea that he simply didn't exist. When she asked her mother, the answers were always short, evasive. He left. It's not worth talking about. And what matters is that we're fine, just the two of us. And they were. In a restrained but beautiful way. It had been enough. Or at least, that's what Lila had always thought. But now, with Evelyn's absence echoing through every corner, with the silence heavier than ever, that unexpected appearance was cracking everything open. She got up, went to the kitchen, and made herself a cup of tea. Fennel. Her mother's favorite. Just smelling it made her eyes sting. She carried the cup to her bedroom, lay down on her side, and stared at the ceiling. On the nightstand, there was a framed picture of the two of them, taken the previous Christmas. Evelyn was smiling, her eyes sparkling, just like always. Lila could still hear her laugh. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she whispered into the empty room. But there was no answer. Just the ticking of the clock marking each second, as if it wanted to remind her that time doesn't stop for anyone. On Monday, Lila woke up early. She had spent the night wide awake, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. She didn't have the energy to go out, but she couldn't stand being there anymore, surrounded by ghosts. She grabbed her bag, threw on a random hoodie, and went for a walk to the little park in the neighborhood. It was where she and Evelyn used to go on Sundays. They would sit on the bench near the gazebo, share a pastry, and watch the kids play. Evelyn used to say the best way to see life was through the eyes of children. Sitting on the empty bench, Lila breathed in the damp morning air, smelling the wet earth. She looked around and closed her eyes. For a moment, she wished she could be a child again. She wished she could turn back time, ask her mother to tell her the truth, to not keep everything to herself. "Why didn't you ever give me this piece of the puzzle, Mom?" she asked, feeling the tightness in her throat. Maybe out of fear. Maybe out of hurt. Or maybe out of protection. But now, it was too late to ask. On Tuesday afternoon, Lila finally worked up the courage to go through her mother's things. Not because she wanted to, but because she needed to. The clothes still held the scent of lavender. The drawers were as neat as always. Everything there seemed untouched, as if her mother could walk through the door any moment and complain about the mess. When she opened the last door of the wardrobe, at the back, among some old blankets, Lila found a yellowed cardboard box. No label, no name. Just a worn-out piece of tape keeping it shut. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her heart racing. This felt important. Or dangerous. With trembling hands, she removed the tape and lifted the lid. Inside, there was a handful of letters, some photographs, and a small navy blue notebook, its edges worn. Lila recognized her mother's handwriting immediately. It was a diary. She picked up one of the photos. It was old, faded. It showed a young woman, her mother, hugging a smiling man with dark hair and eyes that looked just like hers. On the back of the photo, a date, April 1997. And a dedication, written by a man's hand, to the most incredible woman I've ever known. With love, Daniel. The name hit her like a punch. She picked up the diary, hesitated, and opened it to a page marked by a dried flower. Her mother's words started to dance before her eyes. "I never told Lila. I didn't have the courage. Maybe one day she'll find out on her own, and forgive me. Daniel never knew. And I didn't know how to bear the thought of involving him after everything." Lila slammed the book shut. Her chest tight. Her mouth dry. That box was a bomb. Daniel had been telling the truth. Lila stayed frozen for several minutes, the diary on her lap, the letters scattered beside her. The world she knew was starting to crumble, and deep down, a voice whispered, "You need to know more. You need to hear the other side." She looked at her phone on the nightstand and remembered the piece of paper Daniel had given her at the cemetery. She rushed to the pile of dirty clothes in the bathroom and searched the pocket of the jacket she wore the day of her mother's funeral. She paced the house, trying to figure out what to say. Finally, she decided to send a short message. "Daniel, can we talk?" The corner cafe felt too small for Lila's anxiety. Sitting at a table in the back, she gripped her hands in her lap, trying to hide her restlessness. The clink of cups, the hum of side conversations, and the espresso machine buzzing in the background couldn't drown out the sound of her own heart pounding. 5 minutes late. 6. 7. When Daniel finally walked through the door, Lila recognized him immediately. He looked different from the day at the cemetery. More put together, but with the same look, an odd mix of guilt, hope, and fear. She didn't stand. She just watched him approach the table with hesitant steps, as if at any moment she might tell him to leave again. "Hey, Lila," he said, sitting carefully. "Thanks for calling me." She nodded silently, not smiling, her throat too dry to try to be polite. She waited for the waitress to take his order and walk away before speaking. "I found a box with letters, photos, and a diary." She went straight to the point. Daniel didn't hide his surprise. "Your mom kept all this?" "She did. There was even a photo of you too. You wrote a dedication on the back." Lila's tone was firm. "I want you to tell me everything. No beating around the bush. Who were you to my mom? And why did you disappear?" Daniel ran a hand through his graying hair and took a deep breath, like he was opening a drawer that had been locked for years. "I met Evelyn when we were really young. We were in our early 20s. Everything was intense, fast, beautiful, but complicated. I was a photographer, working on documentary projects and humanitarian trips. I'd be gone for months at a time, in remote places, capturing stories, conflicts, cultures. It was a life without stability, without routine. Your mom wanted the opposite: calm, roots, security. And I couldn't give that to her." He paused, his eyes lost in some distant memory. "We loved each other, but we started drifting apart. We fought a lot. Then one day, I came back from a trip to the Middle East, and she was gone. No letters, no explanation. I thought she left on her own. I tried to find her for a while, but life swallowed me up again. And now I know why." Lila crossed her arms, skeptical. "Because she was pregnant?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. And, for some reason I still don't fully understand, she decided not to tell me. Maybe out of fear. Maybe to protect me. Maybe out of anger. I don't know. All I know is that I found out the truth just a few months ago, from a mutual acquaintance who told me about Lila, and something clicked. I looked into it. Found your full name, your city. And then I learned about your mom's illness. But by the time I got here, it was already too late." Silence. Lila swallowed hard. It was too much to process. Part of her wanted to get up and leave. The other part, the part that scared her the most, wanted to keep listening. "Why did you come anyway?" she finally asked. Daniel smiled, sadly. "Because I've waited my whole life for a chance to be something to someone. And even if you don't need me, even if you hate me, I needed to look you in the eyes and say, I exist. And if you want, if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your life. Even if it's just a small part." Lila felt her eyes burn, but she didn't cry. She still didn't know what to think. It still hurt. It still felt wrong. But, for some reason she couldn't explain, for the first time since her mother passed, she didn't feel quite as alone. "I'm not promising anything," she whispered. "That's more than I expected," he replied. Lila spent the afternoon alone in her room, the fading light of the day streaming through the window, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Her mother's diary lay on the bed like a sacred artifact, fragile, old, but full of truths. Each page seemed to breathe, to whisper. She reread familiar passages, some she hadn't noticed before. Her mother's words had an intimate, almost confessional tone. It felt as if she were hearing her voice again, smelling her scent on the yellowed paper. On one of the more tucked-away pages, folded at the corner, Lila found an undated entry. The ink had faded a little, as if written in haste. The title, written in small letters at the top of the page, made her shiver. The day I had to choose. Today, I saw Daniel from a distance. He was coming back from another trip. His face was tired, his eyes bright. My heart ached. I still love him. But I can't live on this roller coaster anymore. I found out I'm pregnant. I don't know how to tell him. I don't know if I should. Daniel would never be cruel, but he doesn't know how to stop. He was born for the world, not for a house with curtains and the smell of baby powder. I thought about telling him today, but I saw the camera hanging around his neck, and I understood. He's already somewhere else. In another dream. So, I decided to leave. Quietly. Not out of revenge. But out of love. Also out of fear that he'd say he'd stay and then leave me alone with a child in my arms. I'll raise this child with every ounce of strength I have. She will grow up knowing she was loved. Even if I have to hide part of the story. The part that hurt the most. The part that still hurts. Lila closed the diary with trembling hands. For minutes, she couldn't breathe properly. That page changed everything. Her mother didn't hate him. She loved him. So much that she chose to suffer in silence, to avoid having to explain a bigger absence later. To protect Lila from the pain of a broken promise. She stood there, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, she understood that her mother wasn't afraid of Daniel. She was afraid of the life he led. And she was afraid that one day, Lila would feel rejected, abandoned. But now, knowing this, she didn't know what to feel. It hurt, but it also freed her. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. It was a message from Daniel. I know I probably shouldn't insist. But if you want to talk again, I'm here. Just let me know. No rush. With care, Daniel. Lila stared at the screen, then at the diary. And for the first time, she seriously thought about responding. The cafe was familiar, but this time, Lila felt different. A little less anxious, maybe more open. She sat by the window, watching the busy street as she stirred her tea, trying to keep her thoughts in check. She had read and reread that page from the diary countless times. She slept with it open next to her bed, as if her mother's presence could somehow guide her to make the right choice. And now, here she was, about to speak again with a man who, just 2 weeks ago, had been nothing more than a face without a name. Daniel showed up right on time. He wore a thick jacket and carried a leather briefcase under his arm. His smile was subtle, more grateful than happy. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting down across from her. Lila nodded. The silence between them was less tense than the first time, but it still held the weight of everything unknown. "I read part of my mom's diary," she started. "And now I understand why she never told you." Daniel sighed, relieved but also saddened. "She was always strong. Maybe too strong. She thought telling you might hurt us more than forgetting you. And maybe, she did what she thought was right." Daniel nodded slowly. "I get it. I swear, I do. And I didn't come here to ask anything from you, Lila. I just want you to know that when I found out you existed, something shifted in me. For the first time, I felt like I could put down roots. Stay. Belong." He opened his briefcase carefully and pulled out a brown envelope, its edges slightly crumpled, with Lila written in handwriting. He placed it gently on the table, pushing it toward her. "This is for you. I started putting this together the moment I found out you were my daughter. It's a kind of story. Mine, yours, ours. Some photos, notes, letters I never sent. And one more thing. Lila hesitated before taking the envelope. She opened it slowly. Inside were several photographs, some taken in remote places: children laughing in Ethiopia, women dancing in India, deserts at sunset, rainforests. But there was also a letter, handwritten, dated 2 months ago. Lila, I don't know what you're like. I don't know if you have my nose, your mom's eyes, or the impulsive streak that always got me in trouble. But I think about you every single day. Since I found out you existed, I've started to see the world differently. I used to take photos to capture stories. Now, I want to take photos to show you what you haven't seen yet. I want to show you who I am. And give you the freedom to decide if you want to know me. Not for me. For you. The letter ended with a simple signature, Daniel. At the bottom of the envelope was a smaller note. Lila flipped it over and read, I have a proposal, but only if you want to hear it. No pressure. Just let me know if you're ready. She lifted her eyes. Daniel was waiting in silence. Proposal? She asked cautiously. He smiled softly, but there was a seriousness in his gaze. A trip. Not long. A special place to me, where I took one of my favorite photos. It's a place that represents new beginnings. If you want to go, it'll be entirely up to you. No strings attached. Just a chance to see the world as I see it. And maybe, to get to know me too. Lila held the envelope in her lap, feeling the weight of it. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a desperate plea. It was just a door left slightly open. And for the first time, she considered walking through it. Lila scanned the photographs in the envelope while waiting in the garden of Abigail's house, an old friend of her mother's, who had drifted apart from Evelyn in recent years. But after Evelyn's death, Abigail had sent a warm, unexpected message. When the door opened, a woman with graying hair and a welcoming smile embraced her tightly. You're looking more and more like her, Abigail said, wiping her eyes discreetly. Come in, sweetheart. I made some tea, just like she liked it. They sat on the porch, surrounded by pots and hanging plants. The sweet scent of chamomile filled the air. Your mother used to talk about you all the time. Even when we lost touch a bit. She was so proud of you, Abigail sighed. And now, knowing you're in touch with Daniel. Lila nodded, staring into her cup. It all happened so fast. He showed up at the cemetery, and then we talked. He told me his side, the life of a photographer, the distance, the confusion, and how my mom left without saying anything. Abigail made a sound, almost a humorless laugh. Yeah. He always had a knack for making stories sound lighter when the weight didn't sit well with him. What do you mean by that? Abigail took a deep breath. She sat in silence for a few moments, as if weighing whether or not to continue. Look, Lila, your mom never told you because she wanted to protect you. But I saw what she went through. When she left, pregnant, alone, suffering, she still had hope. So, when the longing became unbearable, she went looking for Daniel. What? She was vulnerable, going through a tough pregnancy on her own, and convinced herself that she had made a mistake by hiding the truth from him. But when she found him, he was already with someone else, a journalist he met on one of his trips. They seemed inseparable. Your mom was devastated. Lila's eyes widened. But he said he never saw her again, that he only found out about me recently. That's true. When Evelyn found out Daniel had moved on, she disappeared again without speaking to him. This time, for good. She thought maybe she had been replaced. Forgotten. Lila replayed the conversation with Daniel the first time they met at the cafe. For some reason, I still don't fully understand, she decided not to tell me. Maybe out of fear. Maybe to protect me. Maybe out of anger. Her face burned. Daniel never mentioned this. He talked about pain, about missing her, but never about another relationship. Never about moving on so quickly. So that's why he thought my mom might have been angry with him. Look, Lila. I'm not saying he's a bad person. But he wasn't honest with your mother when he said he loved her. And maybe he's not being completely honest with you either. Lila fell silent. Maybe that's why her mom stopped writing in the diary. The disappointment must have been so deep that it made her feel foolish for holding on to that unreciprocated love. She lowered her gaze to the envelope in her lap. It had been filled with new emotions, but now it felt lighter. Empty. Just be careful about letting him get too close. Take it slow, Abigail advised. They said their goodbyes soon after. And when Lila returned home, she locked herself in her room, tossed the envelope onto the bed, and stared at the letter he had written. I want to give you the freedom to choose if you want to know me. She felt foolish. And used. As if that trip proposal had been a carefully staged act to cover up old guilt. She grabbed her phone, took a deep breath, and typed the message. You forgot to tell me something. The most important part. But she didn't send it. She deleted it. Tossed the phone onto the desk and collapsed onto the bed. This time, she cried without shame. Because now, it wasn't just about loss. It was about lies. And once again, she found herself questioning whether she could trust anyone. "2 days. That's how long it took Lila to search for Daniel. But when she did, it wasn't with a message. It was with the decision to face him. Eye to eye. She arranged to meet him at the same cafe as before. She arrived, determined, no beating around the bush, with the envelope in hand. Daniel smiled when he saw her, but the smile faded as soon as he read the expression on her face. What happened? She sat down slowly, placing the envelope on the table. I spoke with a friend of my mom's. Abigail. She told me about the other woman. The journalist. Right after my mom left. Daniel's face went stiff. He leaned back in his chair as if he'd been hit. Lila, he started, but she raised her hand. No, I need to talk first. You said my mom disappeared. That you were left with no answers. That you looked for her, but found nothing. And all of that made it seem like you were stuck in the past. Like you suffered. But from what I heard, it wasn't like that at all. You turned the page. Quickly. And now you show up with an envelope full of memories and promises? She wasn't yelling. But her voice carried a firm pain that trembled in the spaces between her words. Daniel lowered his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. I should have told you. Yes. But not out of shame. Not out of malice. It's just, it wasn't what it seemed. How so? Your mom left. Without a word. No explanation. I came back from a trip, and she was gone. I looked for her, yes. I asked neighbors, tried to reach out to mutual friends. And nothing. I thought she had just left me. Plain and simple. I never imagined, not for a second, that she was pregnant. Daniel paused. His gaze was steady, but there was a damp shine in his eyes. The journalist, the relationship was an attempt to move on. But it didn't last. Maybe 3 months, tops. I wasn't really there. I ended it before I hurt anyone. I never told your mom because I didn't know she was still watching from afar. If I had known. He rubbed his face, suddenly looking much older. I'm not here trying to justify myself as the perfect man. I was immature. Selfish, maybe. But when I found out you existed, it woke me up. It was like a part of me that had always been missing suddenly had a name. A face. A story. Silence. Lila didn't know what to think. The Daniel in front of her didn't seem like a liar. But he also didn't seem completely innocent. He seemed human. Why didn't you tell me all this from the start? She asked, in a whisper. Because I wanted you to see me as someone trustworthy. Someone possible. And I thought if I told you about the other woman, everything would fall apart. I thought you'd think exactly what you're thinking now." She lowered her eyes. Her hands were cold. "I don't know what to believe, Daniel." "That's okay," he said calmly. "You don't have to believe right now. And you don't have to forgive. Just don't close the door completely. Let me show you, over time, who I am today." She stared at him for a long time. And then, without saying anything, she grabbed the envelope, stood up, and walked out. Daniel didn't try to stop her. He just sat there, staring out the window, as if waiting for time to do what words no longer could. It was raining. Light, persistent. The sound of raindrops on the window was the only noise in the silent night. Lila sat on the floor of her mother's room. Around her, cardboard boxes filled with old belongings, some still sealed since the funeral. On the shelf, the recipe notebooks and diaries Evelyn had kept since she was young. She wasn't looking for anything specific. But maybe she was searching for everything at once. A sign, a memory, a direction. It was between two old photo albums that she found the yellowed envelope. Small, with the name Lila written in pen, in the handwriting she would recognize even with her eyes closed. In the bottom corner, the words "open only when you're lost." Her heart raced. She hesitated for a second, then broke the seal and began to read. "My Lila. If you're reading this, maybe the world feels upside down inside you. Maybe you're wondering why people fail, lie, or hide. I've asked myself that for years. I wanted so badly to protect you from everything, even from my own wrong choices. Daniel. Yes, he broke my heart. But he was also someone who made me dream when everything felt gray. And even though I suffered, I need to tell you something I never wrote in the diaries. It wasn't just him who was wrong. I was proud. I felt betrayed before I even knew the truth. I never tried to listen to him, nor did I give him a chance to explain. I disappeared. I hid behind fear. And deep down, part of me wanted him to suffer like I did. But, my daughter, hurt is like invisible chains. It keeps you stuck in the past. If that man ever knocks on your door, I don't know what he'll have to offer. But I know what you have: choice. Choose to listen. Choose to feel. And choose what your heart believes is right. Not because he deserves it. But because you deserve to live without this weight. With all the love I carry. Mom. When Lila finished reading, silent tears were running down her face. Her mother's words were a mirror. Painful, but necessary. She closed her eyes and sat there, holding the letter, for long minutes. She no longer knew what to think or what she should do. She cried softly and alone until she fell asleep. The morning sun filtered through the cracks in the curtains when Lila woke up. Her mother's letter was still on the nightstand, as if it had been watching over her dreams. On her phone screen, the last message from Daniel the day before remained unanswered. "Don't give up on me." Still feeling confused, she typed, "I need some time." With determination, she got out of bed, grabbed a suitcase from the closet, and started packing a few clothes. She didn't just need time, she needed distance. From everything. She wasn't sure where she would go yet, but she couldn't stay there any longer. She got in the car and drove. She only stopped when she found the ocean. Taking a deep breath, she inhaled the salty air mixed with the scent of trees, mountains, and sand. She walked barefoot, letting the salty water soak her feet. Nature, little by little, helped quiet the storm inside her. In the days that followed, Lila woke up early, wandered aimlessly, and sat by the shore with her feet in the damp sand and her heart, for the first time, in no rush. She wrote. A lot. In an old notebook, she scribbled memories of her mother, unanswered questions, confessions she had never voiced. But she didn't only think about Evelyn. She thought about Daniel. She thought about his sincere expressions, the slight tremor in his voice when he asked for a chance. What if he was telling the truth? What if he wasn't? She sighed and went back to writing. Because on this trip, She wasn't looking for answers. She was looking for silence. Space. Air. On the last night, while walking through a local market, she found an elderly woman selling stone necklaces. One caught her eye, a small amethyst wrapped in silver. For clarity of the soul, the woman said, smiling. And to protect from what's false, even within ourselves. Lila smiled back and bought it. That night, she wrote only one sentence in her notebook. The truth can wait. My heart cannot. She still didn't know what she would do when she got back. But she knew who she wanted to be. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of everything. The rain fell lightly but steadily. The gray sky seemed to press down on the road. Lila had decided to go back. She felt more centered, more sure of herself. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew she didn't need them to begin again. The car cruised along the highway at a calm pace. The radio played a soft, nostalgic song. She thought about her mother. She thought about Daniel. She thought about what could still come from the pain or despite it. It was on a curve, just a few miles from home, that everything happened. The car ahead slammed on its brakes suddenly. A sharp swerve. A reflex that didn't come fast enough. The impact. The metallic, dry sound of the world collapsing. And then, silence. The shattered glass. The twisted metal. The lifeless body. When the paramedics arrived, Lila was unconscious. A deep cut on her forehead. A fractured collarbone. Signs of trauma. The next few hours would be critical. At the hospital, doctors and nurses rushed against time. Monitors beeped. Bright lights. Lives in their hands. Daniel was called because he was the last missed call on Lila's phone. He arrived breathless, panic-stricken. When he saw his daughter's body on the gurney, so fragile, so silent, the world seemed to crumble around him. Stay with her, the nurse whispered. Talk to her. She can hear you. He took her cold, limp hand. Please stay with me. I know I messed up. I know you had 1,000 reasons to hate me, but you also gave me a chance. And I'm not ready to lose you. Not now. Not again. Tears flowed uncontrollably. Inside Lila's unconscious mind, everything was foggy, until images began to form in her sleeping mind. She was walking barefoot through a white field, where there was no time. Just calm. And longing. That's when she saw her. Her mother. Evelyn was in white, with the same serene smile Lila remembered from her childhood. She looked younger, more alive than any memory. Slowly, she approached. Mom! Lila whispered, her voice trembling. I'm here, my love. I've always been. Lila embraced her, and everything in her seemed to warm. A hug that lasted whole years. Am I dying? Evelyn shook her head gently. You're between doors. You can go, or you can stay. I'm scared. I know. But you're stronger than you think. And there's a beautiful life waiting for you, if you have the courage to return to it. And Daniel? Evelyn smiled. Sometimes, forgiveness doesn't come through certainty. It comes through choice. Loving is risking. And trusting again is a kind of faith. Only you can decide if he deserves that faith. But don't run from what you feel just because you're afraid of getting hurt. Don't repeat my mistake. Did you forgive him? I forgave him the moment I found out about you. Lila cried. But it didn't hurt as much anymore. It was as if a window had opened inside her chest. And you, her mother asked. Are you ready to live? Gradually, the sounds started returning. The smell of the hospital. The bright light behind her eyelids. The warmth of a hand on hers. Lila opened her eyes. Daniel was there, his eyes filled with tears. You're back. She tried to smile. Weak, but real. I dreamed about her, she murmured. Daniel gently squeezed her hand. And what did she say? Lila looked at him for a long time. That I need to follow my heart. Silence. But for the first time in a long time, that silence was peace. The days following the accident were slow. Painful. Every movement felt like an effort. Each night was a battle against nightmares. But in the midst of all of it, there was something unexpectedly gentle: Daniel. He was always there. On the first morning when Lila could finally open her eyes more clearly, she found him asleep beside her bed, his head resting on his arms. His hair was messy, his beard unshaven, exhaustion visible, but there, steady, whole. On Monday, he brought her a new hairbrush, because Lila had mentioned that she always hated the ones that pulled too hard on her hair. By Wednesday, he showed up with an old sweater of Evelyn's that he found buried in the back of a closet. He handed it to her without saying much, but his eyes spoke volumes. "I thought this might keep you warm," he said, his voice breaking. She put it on. And she felt warm in a way that didn't have a name. The following week, back at home, Daniel made her favorite teas, cut up fruit, read the books she loved just so they could talk about them. When she cried from pain or frustration, he simply stayed there. He didn't try to fix anything. He just stayed. And he kept staying. He stayed when she vented about not knowing what to believe. He stayed when she yelled at him, saying she couldn't stand having doubts. He stayed when she finally whispered, "You really are trying, aren't you?" He just nodded. "I've wasted so much time, Lila. But if you let me, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to give you back at least a part of what you deserved." Over time, Lila started to improve. She walked more confidently. She started writing again. She started laughing again. And one day, when Daniel came to see her, she was sitting in the backyard, in the sun, with a notebook on her lap. "What are you writing?" he asked, curious. She smiled without looking directly at him. "A journal. I started today. I want to remember what it was like to start over." Daniel stepped closer, hesitating. "And do I show up in this new beginning?" Lila looked him in the eyes for a long moment. Then, she nodded. "You do. But not as the man who made mistakes. Not as the father who came back too late." He held his breath. "You show up as someone who stayed." Daniel sat beside her. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. In that moment, they both looked up at the clear blue sky, where no cloud threatened the day. And between the soft breeze and the smell of tea drifting from the kitchen, it became clear that something new was beginning. It wasn't perfection. It was truth. And sometimes, that was more than enough. Months had passed since the accident. The scar on Lila's forehead was still visible, but it no longer bothered her. It had become a quiet reminder that she had survived and chosen to truly live, despite all the uncertainties. On that spring afternoon, she walked through a peaceful cemetery, a white rose in her hands. By her side, Daniel walked in respectful silence. They stopped in front of a simple but well-kept gravestone. Evelyn Gray. Love doesn't end. It changes form. Lila crouched down and placed the rose on the grave. She closed her eyes for a moment. "Mom. I'm okay. Really. It still hurts a little inside, sometimes, but now it's a pain that makes me remember. And be grateful." Daniel knelt beside her and placed a small framed photo next to the flowers, the two of them, Evelyn and Lila, smiling, back when life still seemed whole. "Thank you for her," he murmured. Lila turned to her father. The bond between them now was made of small gestures, shared silences, and a truth built in the present. They were still getting to know each other, day by day. But it was real. As they walked back to the car, Daniel said, "I need to introduce you to someone." "Someone?" The son of a good friend of mine who helped me a lot when I lived abroad. He's here visiting for a while. I thought you two might get along. Lila raised an eyebrow, suspicious. You're trying to set me up with someone, aren't you? Daniel laughed. I'm just saying, he's smart, calm, likes old books, and he's got that kind of look that listens before judging. Lila pretended to be uninterested but smiled. One day, maybe. 2 weeks later, that one day came. They were at a bookstore and Daniel introduced them. His name was Tom. Shy at first, but with a calm smile. They started talking about books, then about instrumental music. And soon, they forgot Daniel was even there. By the end of the afternoon, Tom said his goodbyes with an easy invitation. If you want, there's a little market downtown on Saturday. I always go, but I'd like it if you join me. Lila agreed. That night, back home, she opened her journal and wrote. The pain hasn't disappeared. But it's lost its strength. Now, what moves me is light. Like a new encounter. Like the chance to trust. Like a kind of love that doesn't try to be perfect, just present. And as she closed the notebook, she was certain that her story with Daniel was no longer an unfinished chapter. It was a new beginning. And by turning that page, she wasn't walking alone anymore. The soft music echoed through the glass hall, where the light of the setting sun filtered through the windows, casting everything in a golden hue. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the breeze. Inside, hearts beat faster. Daniel stood, wearing a simple yet elegant navy blue suit. In his hands, he held a small handkerchief, not so much out of protocol, but because he knew, in just a few minutes, the emotions would come rushing in. The doors opened. Lila entered, dressed in white, her eyes glistening with tears, but her smile the calmest he'd ever seen on her. She looked stunning. But more than that, she was whole. Confident. Happy. She walked up to him and took his arm. Ready, he whispered, swallowing the lump in his throat. I've always been, she replied, her voice full of emotion. I was just waiting for you to come back. And so, side by side, they walked toward the altar. Daniel brought Lila to Tom, who looked at her as though he were seeing the miracle he had silently prayed for his whole life. Daniel shook his son-in-law's hand firmly, and as he gave his daughter away, he couldn't hold back a tear. Take care of her, he said. Tom nodded. With everything I am. And there, in front of family and friends, Lila and Tom promised a lifetime together, with room for doubts, for joy, for growth. A year later, the same golden sky illuminated another unforgettable moment. In the maternity room, Lila held a baby girl in her arms, her eyes tightly shut, her little nose turned up. Tom stood beside her, grinning, unsure where to store so much love. Daniel entered slowly, as if walking into a sacred space. Lila gestured for him to come closer, and with tears in her eyes, said, Dad, meet your granddaughter. Her name is Evelyn. Daniel placed his hands on his mouth, unable to speak. He simply approached, looked at the sleeping girl, and gently touched her tiny hand. Thank you for this gift, he whispered, overwhelmed with emotion. In that moment, something healed within him, a long-held wound, a guilt that now gave way to a new role, that of a grandfather. A present grandfather. A few months later, Lila noticed something new about her father. A lighter look. A different sparkle in his eyes. Are you hiding something from me? She teased. Daniel smiled shyly. I met someone. Really? Who is she? Her name is Marta. She has a laugh that fills the house. She likes tea with lemon, and she has the patience I needed to learn to deserve. Lila smiled back. Then promise me you'll let yourself be happy. Daniel held her hand. I already am. Because I've started believing again. You taught me how. On the porch of Tom and Lila's new house, on a calm late afternoon, the four of them were together. Evelyn was asleep in Marta's arms, who gently rocked the chair. Daniel was telling a story, and everyone was laughing. It was simple. It was peaceful. It was love in its most complete form, built over time. And even though the world outside changed, inside, everything was at peace.